So I'm going to share 7 steps to enable you to start leveraging artificial intelligence specifically for research and insights. And I'm going to start with a quick word about ChatGPT because it's not one of the 7 steps I'm going to be talking about. Then we're going to look at a variety of different options that you can use to really get things moving in the right direction. So one of the reasons I'm not starting with ChatGPT is about 2/3 of you on this call are probably already using ChatGPT. When we did a survey back in June, we found that 2/3 of the NewMR community, the wider group of people that we can reach, had used ChatGPT in the last month. But then there's this really big drop off before we get to Copilot, Gemini, Claude. Potentially 7% of you haven't used an AI platform in the last month. And on average, people are using 1.5 platforms per person. But some people are using 7 or 8, and lots of people are using 1. So just a couple of thoughts about the things that people are using all the LLMs for, and in particular ChatGPT. They're using it for things like upload a document and ask for a summary. This is an everyday task, whether it's a research-related task, whether it's a piece of legislation, a new handbook from our employer. Getting a summary of it is a great use. Uploading documents that we've written and asking ChatGPT to find errors or to make suggestions for improvements. Or alternatively, asking ChatGPT and Copilot and Gemini and Claude and all of these to give us the first draft of some notes or the first draft of letters, emails and reports. So all of these are really standard things. They're things you should certainly already be doing. So let's look at the 7 tips. And the first one I want to talk about is Perplexity. So Perplexity is a fully featured large language model. If you go for Perplexity Labs, there are some really quite advanced, interesting options that you might want to look at. But I'm going to be talking about using the free Perplexity and using it as your key search tool. I've almost completely stopped, and lots of people that I talk to have almost completely stopped using Google. We're using Perplexity as our search tool of choice. So earlier today, I typed in, what news has there been about Grok and problems in the last few days? It searches the internet, it pays attention to the last few days, and it comes back with a whole list of things about Grok being anti-Semitic and praising Hitler, that it's been banned in Turkey because it made derogative comments about the president, recap Erdogan. And as well, it also has the common sense. I've asked about the last few days, and it says it's not the first time. It wants to make sure that I'm aware that these things have cropped up. So instead of getting a list of headlines, which is what I would have got if I'd Googled it, I get an answer and I get all of the citations. I can go and check to what extent is this a fair or an accurate summary. I use Perplexity for how do I do things all the time. If I forget, I use a Mac. How do I combine 2 PDF files? I just type that into Perplexity. I have Perplexity on my desktop. I don't just have to go to the web interface. It's always there. I have it on my phone as well. The internet has to be connected in order to run it, but I've got it on my phone. I've got it on my desktop. It's just really convenient. But I use it in particular when I'm asking questions about the large language models and the AI platform. So here's a question I asked in Google Gemini: can I create a Word file for downloading? And it comes back with, no, you can't do it natively. You can export Google Docs. So you can create a workaround by exporting it as a Google Docs and then loading that into Google and downloading it as a Word file, or you can use third-party tools. The reason that I prefer to use Perplexity to ask a question about Gemini is it's normally more up to date. One of the problems with all of the platforms is they have cutoff dates. And if they use their own knowledge about themselves, they tend to be out of date. If I go to ChatGPT and ask it a question about how to use a new feature of ChatGPT, it may not even know about it because of this date cutoff. If it does a web search, it'll find it. But if I ask Perplexity, I get an up-to-date answer, and it's really useful. So that's the number one tip. The next one is about deep research, and deep research exists already in ChatGPT. Perplexity has got a deep research. Gemini's got a deep research. You can sort of do it in the other platforms, not quite as easily. And it's a combination of a large language model, web searches, and reasoning. Reasoning is where the model takes more than one step. It looks at the quality of its answer. It can change direction if necessary to give you a better answer. So let's have a look at using deep research in Gemini. I click on the deep research button, so it goes a nice blue in this interface. And I ask it, what are the main brands of ready-to-serve coffee in Japan? Who owns them? Who drinks them? And what are the most popular flavors and variants? I might want to do this as a bit of background research before a meeting or before creating a questionnaire. It then checks with me about whether its method of solving the problem is right. If I'd chosen ChatGPT, it would actually ask me additional questions usually as well. So once I say yes, that looks like a good plan of action in terms of ready to drink, which is a better term, then it'll start the research. About 15 minutes later, it comes back to me with an 11-page report, lots of data, lots of information, 66 different sources of information. It's talking about the history, the factors, who owns what, and key pieces of information. So what I would say is you should always use deep research. Unless you know 100% about a topic, then just have a look to see if there's anything new. And your deep research could be, please have a look for information in the last month about, and then whatever it is you're interested in. So it's a good idea to do deep research at the beginning of a project to get a better background. And during analysis, do another deep research to see whether there's other cases. You find something interesting, an interesting quote, an interesting comment maybe, and you want to know whether other people have said something similar. Deep research is a good way of trying to find that out. But check what it tells you. It's kind of as reliable as Wikipedia, often right, but always worth checking. Also, most of the deep research tools now can be configured so they will just look at your Google Drive, or they will just look at your folders. So maybe you've uploaded a whole set of information from the past 20 years. Here are all of our research reports covering X years. Ask deep research to look at them and use its analysis and come up with a report is another method. And then you know it's only looking at real stuff because it's only looking at your stuff. So tip number 3 is about using Gemini. So Gemini is produced by Google. It was a bit of a slow starter, I would say, in the LLM space, but it's moved ahead really quickly. Here's the interface. We can choose which model. Technically, last week anyway, Google Gemini had the most powerful of the LLM models. We can use agents. It calls them gems, and I'm going to be talking about agents in a moment. So here's a simple example of using it. I uploaded a PDF all about using Maxdiff for tracking. So that's going to pull that through there, show me a 100-word summary of this file. And it comes back with the summary. So this is really standard, and pretty much anything you can do in ChatGPT or Copilot or Claude, you can do in Gemini. But there are some interesting things you can do in addition. So if you click on the share button, you can share it to Docs, or you can share it to Gmail. So you've done a bit of research, you think it's really interesting, you click share to Gmail if you're a Gmail company, and it will put it straight in ready. You put a little bit of surrounding text and you send it off to the people who need to know. And that's an interesting bit of integration. So let's look at that integration even more. I'm using Google Sheets. I've got some data, and now I've got Gemini available to me. So I'm going to say, add a new row showing the totals for the 3 columns. It does that, and it gives me an insert button. I click on the insert button, and in it goes into the sheets itself. So if you are a company or an individual that uses Google Docs, Google Sheets, Slides, Gmail, you really want to be leveraging Gemini. Don't just think of it as an LLM where you're going to do these sort of tasks at the top level through the web interface. It can make almost everything you do more efficient. Copilot from Microsoft. So here is the interface for the web version of it. We can upload files, we can create images, we can create agents. Remember, I'm going to be talking about agents in a moment. It's worth noting that it's got two interfaces. There's the external face of Copilot and the internal face of Copilot. And when we're using the internal face, it can access everything you've given it permission to, SharePoint, Gmail, all of your files in a really secure way. So I've got the slider set to work and I type in, look at my email sent over the last week and tell me the 5 words I use most often. It comes back with this. You can set this up to say, were there any conversations I had last week that look like I've not finished them? And it will go through and it will pull that sort of information back. But if I've got it set to web and I say, look at my emails over the last week for 5 words, it says it can't do it. This is part of this security blanket that Microsoft gives that's really superior to any of the other LLMs. If you're in work mode, you are much more protected than any other systems and more protected than when you're using Copilot in web mode. 2 ways of using Copilot beyond that. One is you can use it inside the apps, inside Word, inside Excel, or you can use it as the web interface version. So that's how you would get the web interface version, that icon at the top, and this icon that's in the ribbon, the main place where all the other buttons are, is how you'd use the internal version. So this is the external version. I uploaded a report, a NewMR study, and that's how I uploaded it. Clicked it on there, up came the Excel file. And then I put in this sort of prompt. Add a new column called sentiment polarity and another called sentiment, using the column whose heading starts looking forward, and text blob. Calculate the sentiment polarity of the entry in the column and put the polarity in the new sentiment polarity column, and sentiment expressed as positive, negative, or neutral in the sentiment column. I've said that because I know that Copilot uses Python, and its Python has got a library called TextBlob. And if it uses TextBlob, we're getting real sentiment analysis. So knowing how these things pull together can make it much more powerful for you. I can see there are some questions coming in. I'm going to take all of them at the end. So I said it's using Python, and we're going to take Python as the last of the tips. But I get this code icon just here. I click on the code icon, and I can now look at the Python code that it used. And this is something that we're going to need to do to make sure that we're happy with the way it's doing the analysis. We don't have to write Python code, but I think most of us will want to have some understanding of what's happening. And it created this Excel file for me. I've got the polarity in one column, and then I've got the sentiment in the adjacent column. And I can look at those polarity scores and say, well, it's calling 0 as neutral, but maybe I want to change it so everything below 0.1 and above minus 0.1 is actually a neutral. I can do that sort of tweaking if I want, which is much more control about how things are happening. Just like I did with Gemini, if I'm an Office 365 user with Copilot, I can, in Excel, do things like add a new row called total and put the total for each year. It does that, and again, it gives me an insert button, just like I got in Gemini, and it will insert it into the spreadsheet for me. So if you are an Office 365 company, including using Teams, Forms, Excel, Word, you really want to be using Copilot. Don't just use it as a web-based LLM. Use it to radically change the way you're doing everyday tasks. 5th topic we're going to look at is agents. So agents are readily available in ChatGPT. They're called GPTs. They're in Copilot. They are at least called agents. They're in Gemini. They're called gems. Probably some of the others too. So here's a list of some of the agents that I have created in ChatGPT. I have them to do different tasks for me. The one that I'm going to use is a questionnaire designer for a fictitious company called Acme. So I have created this questionnaire designer, which has got all the house style rules built into it. So if I click on that agent, I can then ask it to write a short questionnaire to measure the customer satisfaction with a CrossFit gym in central London. It generates a Canvas page, which means that we can co-edit the result. And it has got all of the house style rules. It's got the right sort of numbering for the Likert scales. It's got the right sort of recommend that my company uses. It's got the sort of introduction. So by using agents this way, you can be sure that every employee in every office around the world is going about questionnaire construction in line with your house style, and they are then able to edit the output where it needs to be edited. Agents are really going to be big. And one of the things I would say is that you won't lose your job to AI. You'll use it to person using with AI. I was never sure that was true, but it was a very popular saying a couple of years ago. You might actually lose your job to an agent. Agents are bits of software designed to do a job, and the growth area is in autonomous agents, which will call other agents. They will do specific tasks. And frankly, agents will replace people in some cases. Sixth is Notebook LM. Now, this is interesting for two reasons. One is it's a fantastic application. But the second is it's such a strong indication of where things are going. So it's a free resource at the moment from Google. If you have a paid Google account, then your Google Notebook LM is protected. If you are using a free Google account, then it's not particularly protected. This is true for all the Google products. You use Google Translate and you're using it from a free account, it's much less protected than if you're using it from a paid account. So we can upload all sorts of things to Notebook LM. We can upload docs and slides and PDFs and a URL, a YouTube we can upload. You can upload audio files. It creates a RAG. Now, a RAG is a retrieval augmented generation. It is a combination of a database and a large language model. So it can find information, you can talk to it in English. And that's what it's creating when it does this. And it then allows you to summarize the material. You can do interactive queries. You can create mind maps. It will create a podcast for you, a little summary of everything that's in the file. So you could download, say, the Grit report or the ESOMAR Global Market Research report. Upload that, and when you're out walking, listen to a 15-20 minute summary of what is in that file. It really changes the way you do things. You can choose the output language. And I was in Japan a couple of weeks ago, so we read lots and lots of documents in English, but we asked for all the outputs to be in Japanese. So this is the point about it being secure if you've got a paid account. So what I did was I uploaded the transcript of a webinar that I had created, and I uploaded that as a PDF to Notebook LM. And it gave me a summary of all the things we talked about. It gave me a mind map of all the things that are in the file, and I can click on each part of this to see how it changes and expands. But also I asked it to create a podcast. And because we were in Japan, I said, create the podcast in Japanese.
こんにちは、ザ・ディープダイブです。今日はですね、あなたが共有してくれた資料、市場調
Evidently, that was quite good Japanese. So, yeah, it's a great tool. You should be using it. But this is a good indication of how you are going to be investigating materials in the future. And it's a great example of what clients will be expecting as a deliverable. They will be expecting something which can generate them videos, generate them podcasts, generate them all sorts of answers from the information. The idea of creating a single static type report is just light years away from where we're going to be. And the seventh and final point, or maybe the final point, is about Python. Large language models, none of them, Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, DeepSeek, can do maths. They are rubbish, even at addition of big numbers, but they can write code. And the main code that they tend to be writing is Python. You saw this in the Copilot example earlier. So if I go to Gemini, I can tell it I want to be in canvas mode. And then I can say to it, write a Python script to calculate and display the first 10 numbers of the Fibonacci series. It opens up a split canvas window. So on the left, I can keep asking instructions. On the right-hand side, it shows me the script. It gives me a run button. If I click the run button, it runs. So when I was in Copilot and I asked it to use text blob for sentiment analysis, that was Python code running in the background. And I have a look at the Python code to see it makes sense. When I'm in ChatGPT and I ask it to do driver analysis, or I ask it to do linear regression, or I ask it to do clustering, it's using Python. And I will have a look at that Python code because the LLMs can't do maths or stats. So we need to get in the habit of looking at the code, and it's usually going to be Python, as part of our checking that what it's doing is the right thing. That is part of how we understand it. And actually, there is an eighth bonus step. Start by assuming AI can do it and try. It changes so fast, it's really difficult to know what AI can and can't do. Try it and see. So don't be over prescriptive. Don't tell it exactly how to code data or how to do sentiment analysis. Explain what you've got, explain what you want, and ask it how to achieve it, because it may have an alternative way of solving the problem. And also, if it can't be done this week, try again the next time you have this problem. One thing you can fool yourself about is assuming that AI can't do something, but actually very quickly it will.